All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. Usual madness today. Trump, one lie after another, but some of his top supporters now turning against him. Really interesting stories. Don't miss that. Obviously, members get the whole show whenever they want. TYT.com/join to make that happen. Or if you're watching on YouTube, click the join button down below. Now, this is our last day of this month's fundraising drive. We're going to keep it going throughout the year, but we're trying to reach $250,000. We were around 225 yesterday. Where are we right now? 231,650. Okay. Can we get a little past $18,000 in just one day? Likely not, but you never know. TYT.com/go. Later, we're going to tell you about Kelly from Texas, who's nothing but awesome. And folks like her can make it possible. So now, one more thing. I think it has to be acknowledged that this is one of the worst T-shirt blazer combos I've ever had. And want to let you know before you even said anything. Okay, so
Cenk, that blazer, though, you're breaking the law with that blazer. What is that?
Pro just said the same thing. He's like, what is it, like some sort of combination of brown and green? He's like, is it something like poop or something? I was like, no. Okay. And I wrote the damn Bill Bernie Sanders t-shirt from shoptyt.com, which does not match this at all. But we're coronavirus up. We're trying to get things to go. I've run out of dress shirts. Let's keep it real. Okay.
Got it.
All right. But running out of medical supplies is more important. And that's the first story.
Yes. So let's get started with that. So a number of Republican governors are starting to raise concerns about Donald Trump's deceptions, especially when it comes to COVID-19 preparedness and the number of tests that are available. Now, recently, Trump had a conference call with a number of governors from some of the rural states. And interestingly enough, there was an exchange by the Montana governor, Steve Bullock. I want to show you what Steve Bullock had to say in the middle of this call, and then we'll go to Trump's reaction to it.
Dr. Fauci, we are trying to do contact tracing, but literally we are one day away if we don't get test kits from the CDC that we wouldn't be able to be tested in Montana. We have gone time and time again to the private side of this, the private market, and where the private market is telling us is that it's the national resources that are then taking our orders apart. So we're getting our orders canceled. And that's for PPE, that's for testing supplies, that's for testing equipment. So while we're trying to do all the contact tracing, we don't have adequate tests to necessarily do it. We don't have the PPE along the way, and we're not finding markets to be able to do that along the way, or private suppliers. So we do have to rely on a national chain of distribution, or we're not going to get it. But we are doing our best to try to do exactly that. In Gallatin County would be an example where we have almost half of our overall states, those are the positives. So we're trying to shift the supplies to really isolate that and do the contact tracing, but we just don't have enough supplies to do the testing.
So he draws a very specific picture of what they're going through in Montana. And the main takeaway here is that they do not have enough testing. But Donald Trump has regurgitated over and over again that no, we're finally getting, the testing that people need in order to get a handle on this virus. That is just not the case. Let me note that Bullock is a Democrat. However, we'll get to the Republican governors in just a minute.
Yeah, guys, this isn't politics. They either have the test or they don't have the test. And the correct answer is they don't have the test. You can just ask around. You don't have to trust us. You don't have to trust Trump. I know you will. You'll trust him over your own eyes and ears if you're a Trump supporter. But ask. I don't know if you know folks who have coronavirus or had any symptoms. It's near impossible to get a test. Earlier, it was flat out impossible. And in some states like Montana, still near impossible. In other places, it's starting to ease up a little bit. So, I've told this story before. I wound up having a tooth infection and a flu, not coronavirus. But I had a fever, and then they said, no, you have to have a fever of 103 for 3 straight days before we'll test you. In other words, your life has to be on the precipice before we'll even test you, because there was no test kits in Los Angeles. At UCLA, they're one of the top medical centers in the country. There are no test kits anywhere for so long. For Trump to constantly going around saying that there are, it's this usual insane lie. But it's one thing when you're doing pathological lies about how you're the greatest and you're the only one who could solve anything, and it isn't related to a pandemic. But when it's related to a pandemic, you're playing with people's lives, and no one can get him to stop lying.
So I want to share an important statistic, because we can do comparisons between the United States and other countries that have actually had a pretty successful response to COVID-19, South Korea being one of them. And the Harvard Business Review recently reported that while South Korea has tested about 4,000 people per million of its population at the time, the United States had just run 5 tests per million, despite the fact that they both reported their first cases at essentially the same time, on January 21st and January 20th. So we have been late in the game. That's no surprise. That's something that's been widely reported. But what's interesting is to see Donald Trump attempt revisionist history in real time. And after he was confronted with the facts on the ground in Montana, here's what his response was to Bullock on that call.
I haven't heard about testing in weeks. We've tested more now than any nation in the world. We've got these great tests, and we come out with another one tomorrow where it's almost instantaneous testing. But I haven't heard about testing being a problem.
So
okay.
He's ridiculous.
I just can't take it. We just showed you the stat. South Korea has tested 4,000 people per million, per capita, right? We've tested 5. 4,000 to 5. 4,000 to 5. So shut up. Stop lying. People's lives are on the line, but he can't help himself. Why? Because it isn't about your life. It isn't about protecting you. It's how do I look? How do I look? In this call, he keeps saying, demanding that people thank him and kiss his ass. Otherwise, he won't send them masks, kits, etc. When asked, he told a reporter that this call was so that the governors could thank him. No, you ignoramus egomaniac. The call is not so that they can thank you. The call is so that you can get them medical supplies so less people die. Now he's going around bragging about it. It'll be a success if only 200,000 people die. No, that is not a success. Jesus Christ.
It's devastating. And today there was a pretty dark statistic reported. Today was the day where the number of deaths in the United States due to coronavirus has surpassed the number of deaths in China. So we are not in a good situation at all. Donald Trump also told reporters during his latest presser that during the call, all the governors told him how happy they were with the job that he's doing, that they think he's doing an excellent job, just completely lied about the contents of the call, even though reporters have access to what actually happened. But look, of course, some might argue Democratic governors are going to criticize Trump because it's partisan politics, but it's not just Democratic governors. In fact, let's go to Larry Hogan, who is the governor of Maryland, and he's very much concerned about the lack of testing in his own state. Take a look.
President Trump has suggested that the testing problems are over. They've been fixed. It's no longer an issue.
Yeah, that's just not true. I mean, I know that they've taken some steps to create new tests, but they're not actually produced and distributed out to the states. So it's a aspirational thing, and they've got some new things in the works, but they're not actually out on the streets, and no state has enough testing.
So, he's being as diplomatic as possible, but he's making it very clear. No, Trump's lying. We don't have the access to testing that he claims we do.
So, guys, think about it. So South Korea and America get their first case at about the same time. South Korea does so much more testing, nearly 1,000 times the amount of testing that we did. And they contain the virus really, really well. Because one of the things that the testing does, other than give relief to people who don't have it and give guidance to the people who do have it, which already on that alone is so monumentally important. But the other thing that it does is it allows you to trace back who that person had contacts with and start to isolate them as well, which then greatly limits how fast the disease can spread. So South Korea did that beautifully. So they have very little cases. China was more draconian in how they isolated people, but now they have less cases than us, even though they have nearly 4 times the population. We, on the other hand, had a buffoon going, I don't want to get blamed. I don't want to get blamed. I just want to get thanked, okay? So if we have a lot of tests, people will know that it's really bad. I don't want them to know. And if they don't know, the markets will stay high. Well, the markets didn't stay high. Science is real. It's undeniable. And the disease ran us over. And now we're handling it worse than almost any nation on earth because we have the most incompetent leader easily out of any nation on earth.
One other problem, though, Cenk, is, yes, he's incompetent. There's no question about it. But he's also purely motivated by self-interest. And what we're seeing is when he communicates with governors, he's much more respondent and much more willing to fulfill the requests of governors who have been nice to him. So, for instance, Ron DeSantis in Florida will hit him up and tell him that he needs X, Y, or Z. And 100% of the time, this is not hyperbole, 100% of the time, if Ron DeSantis needs something, Trump will get it to him. Now, we've heard from governors in blue states, Democratic governors, that the response from Trump has been very different. And this is a huge problem when the leader of the country makes it abundantly clear that he values the lives of certain individuals more, right? Because he sees them as necessary to pursue his own political aspirations and his reelection. Go ahead.
Yeah, Anna, to further your point, he values his own ego higher than your life. And he's supposed to be serving you. He's not supposed to be the boss of you. He's the president of the United States. His job is to represent you all and, yes, to protect you. Instead, he's so busy protecting his fragile little ego of a spoiled little brat. I mean, think about how inhumane that is. It's like a tin pot dictator. Well, if you don't praise me, then you don't get life-saving treatment. That's insanity. That's insanity. If Obama had said, I am not going to give medical supplies to red state governors, to Republican governors of Alabama and Mississippi, because they did not thank me enough, Fox News would want him up on criminal charges. And they'd probably be right. I mean, it's unimaginable that any other Democratic, or really in this case, even a Republican president would do this, would say publicly to everybody, if people don't kiss my ass, I'm going to let them die. But that's the kind of monster this guy is, and openly, brazenly, and yet still Republicans kneel to this tin pot dictator wannabe buffoon. Those Republicans are pathetic, but give credit to the ones who don't, like Larry Hogan.
Let's take a break, but when we come back, I want to discuss what's been happening during some of his pressers, just some pretty gross, he's using the pressers as a way of rallying and running his reelection campaign, and it's pathetic. We have that and more when we come back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Welcome back to the Young Turks. Cenk and Anna with you guys. So this month, we are doing a drive to keep TYT healthy. And it is, of course, a challenge. And like all small businesses, we're struggling through this pandemic right now. And I just want to give a special shout out to someone who helped a tremendous amount. Kelly from Texas. She gave 10 grand, which is stunning, unbelievable, and we love her for it. She said that she first found us on Facebook, then moved over to YouTube to watch us more regularly, and then became a member. She's also $100 a month member. There are different levels, and obviously the higher levels are mainly to support the show, tyt.com/upgrade if you want to move up on levels, and we deeply, deeply appreciate it from all of you. She says she loves Anna's sass and salt. Who doesn't? At that level of membership, you get some swag, and she's hoping that some of the swag is from Anna and JR, which I love. And she says that I do a good job of turning politics into English, which I really, really appreciate. And yeah, you know, I hope I can do that service so we can explain things clearly to you, because a lot of times people make it needlessly confusing. And finally, she said that Trump moved her from Democrat to really left.
Oh, wow.
And she said, what I love about the show is that it's verifiable, that you guys not only tell the truth, but you say how you can look things up, and it checks out every time. So, Kelly, one more time, love you, sister. Thank you for doing that. That makes you part of the Young Turks. She asked if we're going to do an honor wall or a donor wall this time around, as we've done in previous fundraising drives. Yes. In fact, Kelly, we're going to start it in my house. We're going to get like a dry board here in this tiny little office that I have, and I'm going to put your name on it first. So we're at 231,862 right now. Trying to get to 250,000 by the end of the month, which is today. You don't have to give 10,000, guys. And if you can't give under these difficult circumstances, everybody understands. We love you. Stay safe for your family and take care of yourself first. No question about that. But if you can, every little bit helps, and we deeply, deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, and I wanted to say something about Kelly and all the people who have helped us, not just during this fundraiser, but throughout the years. Look, this is such a unique place to work. And one of the things that keeps me up at night, I'm just being 100% honest with you, is where do I go if TYT doesn't exist, right? Because I can't think of any other place where I can really speak my mind and never have to worry about retaliation from management or anything like that. Cenk has been so supportive and understanding through everything. Like, he's a friend. Like, he's, yes, a boss, but where else can I feel as free as I do here to do what I do? And I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it weren't for people like Kelly and all the people who have really carried us throughout the years. And today I woke up in, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are feeling this, in just kind of a dark place, because all of this negative news becomes pretty overwhelming at times. And reading your email to us was huge. Like, that just made me snap out of it and realize how, even in the middle of all this terrible stuff happening, we're so privileged and so lucky to have you guys as part of our family, as our audience. And just thank you to all of you, including Kelly.
Yeah, and whether you're Kelly or you gave $5, at the end of the day, you're our ultimate boss. We report to you guys, and if you don't like what we're doing on air or we're not telling the truth, boom, you fire us. And that's the way it works. Seriously, because we can't sustain this show without you. So thank you for making all this possible. Okay, before we go on as quickly as I can, let me just read a couple of relevant comments here. I'm going to go to Twitter. Nick writes in, I live in Montana. We've hit 184 cases with God knows how many people who have it, and we don't know. We're also on a stay-at-home order until the 10th of April at least. We don't know who has it, and people are not taking this seriously, including the egomaniac president of the United States. So he's right. That's a fact, and you see it on the ground. Ray Navia, on a lighter note, says we need to police that blazer, Cenk. And it is right on that front. Okay, a lot of comments on coronavirus and the blazer. Can UK Progressive says, you guys do an awesome job. Wish there were more honest outlets out there. Thank you, and please keep it up. And El Diablo Ortega says, thank you guys for continuing to broadcast through this crisis. We need you guys now more than ever. Thank you. We need you more than ever. Thank you for using YouTube Super Chat. That also helps the show. And members also set to take the jacket off. So we'll see what happens in the next segment. All right.
Oh, God, I love our members. All right, let's get on to the next story. So Trump's Monday COVID-19 presser was a complete and utter circus. And it's because he invited the founder of a pillow company. I forget the name of the company. Yeah. My Pillow. That's the name. Very creative. Anyway, so he invites this guy on to talk about how he's supposedly helping in the efforts to provide medical supplies, which are desperately needed right now. But it kind of went off the rails when he decided to start talking about the importance of something that actually wouldn't help the majority of Americans right now, while applauding Trump. Take a look.
Now I wrote something off the cuff, if I can read this. Okay. God gave us grace on November 8, 2016, to change the course we were on. God had been taken out of our schools and lives. A nation had turned its back on God. And I encourage you to use this time at home to get back in the Word, read our Bibles, and spend time with our families. Our president gave us so much hope where just a few short months ago, we had the best economy, the lowest unemployment, and wages going up. It was amazing.
So that was Michael Lindell. Again, he is the CEO and founder of My Pillow, and he's also someone who's donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Donald Trump. And what you should notice about Trump's pressers, which are supposed to be about COVID-19, is that he has decided to use those pressers to campaign. And what he's doing by having people like Lindell go up there is basically saying to all of these executives and all these corporations, hey, you do me favors, I'll do you favors. To me, this is such brazen corruption. And, you know, Trump supporters are like, oh, well, he's gonna make masks for doctors. Except the masks that the doctors need are different from the masks that he's gonna provide. And I'll get to those details in a minute. But Cenk, I want you to jump in.
Yeah, so the corruption has many layers here. Liddell is thinking of running for governor in Minnesota as, of course, a Republican. So it helps the Republican Party to publicize him more. He's also given money to Trump. So being a donor of his, then Trump does an infomercial for him, says, oh, I use this pillow. It's great. It's amazing. But why are we having an infomercial for a pillow in the middle of the coronavirus? And this character is wild, outrageous, as Anna is about to explain to you guys. But honestly, I don't believe a word he says based on his past. And so when he says he's creating masks that are going to help people, after reading his history, I thought, no, he's not. I don't believe him for a second.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about his ties to Trump, because I think that's super relevant. First of all, it's a huge problem that Trump is using these pressers, which, you know, is supposed to give people accurate information about something so serious. It's a life or death situation that most Americans are dealing with right now. And Trump is using this to campaign. But look, Michael Lindell has given Trump a whopping $200,000 in the form of campaign contributions and the like. He also appeared on the campaign trail in support of Trump a number of times. On July 9th, 2017, My Pillow was featured at a Made in America roundtable at the White House, where President Trump personally endorsed the product. Okay, and then to your point, Cenk, Trump has been encouraging him to run for governor of Minnesota. Politico reported that Lindell told associates that the president is encouraging him to run for governor of Minnesota in 2022 to, quote, keep Minnesota red beyond the 2020 election. And look, the masks itself. So people are upset at the criticism that Lindell is getting, because they're like, oh, he's a good person. He's a good American. He's using, you know, one of his factories to manufacture these masks that the healthcare professionals desperately need right now. Except here's the difference between the masks that he's, you know, providing and the masks that the doctors and nurses need. Doctors and nurses need something known as N95 respirator masks. These are incredibly effective at preventing the doctors from getting COVID-19. But the masks that he would provide would be made from cotton. They would be more like surgical masks that would stop some splashes and droplets and can prevent a sick person from spreading the germs. But it does not protect the healthcare professional from contracting the virus itself. Now, I bring that up because that difference is important. But one other thing I want to bring up is there have been a number of people throughout the country who have been providing the same masks that Lindell is supposedly manufacturing, right? I'm talking about private citizens. I'm talking about actual like small companies of good people who are not expecting giant government contracts to do this. And why is it that Trump hasn't highlighted their stories? Could it be because this is blatant corruption right in front of our faces and he's trading favors with his campaign supporters? It's disgusting.
Yeah. So a couple of things here. Even people who work for him say he reminds them of Trump in that he will make wild, outlandish claims and then just never follow up. Like he'll say, "Oh, I'm going to do this big, amazing thing," and it might not be something that's charitable, just something they're going to do at work or et cetera. This is his contacts, his associates that are saying this, and then he'll just let it go and they paint it as like, well, he's a big thinker. He's a big thinker, right? No, he's a big liar is what he is. And so he claims that he's going to turn 75% of his production into making these masks. There's no way a Republican guy who's obsessed with his business, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But he's going to, give up profits? No, that means he's either going to make more money from the masks or it isn't true. I'm predicting it ahead of time right now for you. I'm not saying that I have any secret information about his production facility. I'm telling you what I think is going to happen in the future, and I'm going to follow up on it because I don't believe this guy at all. Even his close friends and associates don't believe him. He makes up stuff all the time and never follows through, like his beloved Donald Trump, who he thinks was brought to us by God. He didn't just say that in the speech that you saw. He said it multiple times, that God chose Donald Trump. These guys are all peas in a lunatic pod. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to also, buttress your point by giving you a little more information about this man's character so you can, judge for yourself whether or not he's trustworthy. So when Donald Trump provided the wealthy that massive $2 trillion tax cut, Lindell wanted to support Trump, of course, because he's a millionaire himself, by going out and telling the media, because of Trump's tax cuts, I have raised the wages of my workers. And guess what he did right after that? He laid off 150 of his workers. Okay, that's who Lindell is. And no, I'm not going to be intimidated into thinking like, no, he's a great guy. He's doing a public service. I personally don't trust him. And it's based on the lies that he's told on behalf of Donald Trump in the past.
Yeah, this guy's got scam artists written all over him. And if he's not, and we do follow up, and it turns out he made masks, and, it's okay if he profits off of it, but, but it was reasonable. It wasn't like price gouging, and he actually helped people, then we will come back and tell you that because we care about reality. We care about the truth. But everything in this past indicates that is not how this movie is likely to turn out. Look, so this guy used to be a crack addict. And so I don't say that like, ha. We're progressives. We believe in restorative justice. And besides which, that's a health condition. A lot of folks wind up getting addicted to different things, and we feel bad for him, and then we're thrilled that he came out of it. But even in that story, there's so many things that I don't believe at all. He tells this wild story about how he didn't sleep for 3 weeks, and then every crack dealer in Minnesota made a pledge to not sell him any crack. And that one crack dealer babysat him to make sure that he got some sleep. And he snuck out on him, but none of the crack dealers would sell him crack, even though he offered a $100 bill for crack that was worth $5. None of that story is true. I'm going to pull a Ben Mangus right now. None of that is remotely true. Okay, there's no like the benevolent saints of crack dealers in any given state where where they go look out for a guy and then they don't take $100 bill for a $5 product. This guy is a massive, gargantuan liar. No wonder he likes Donald Trump. And then the last thing is, look at the uneven playing field as always. Look, I'm going to keep it real, and I'm going to keep coming back to this. The media says that progressives like me are disqualified from elections based on a joke that we made in 1999. This guy was a crack addict in 2008 and tells wild, outlandish, preposterous stories about that and everything else. And they're like, oh, he could be governor of Minnesota. This is a good, credible candidate on the Republican side. It's absurd. It's absurd in every way.
Well, let's move on to one other aspect of Trump's latest presser, because it follows a pattern that we've noticed with Trump when it comes to journalists and reporters. So Donald Trump laced into, yet again, Jim Acosta from CNN during one of his latest COVID-19 pressers. Let's watch.
What do you say to Americans who are upset with you over the way you downplayed this crisis over the last couple of months? We have it very much under control in this country. The coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. It's going to disappear. It's like a miracle. It will disappear. March 4th, we have a very small number of people in this country infected. March 10th, we're prepared. We're doing a great job with it. It will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away.
Perfectly great question.
Perfectly great question. He was not very happy with that question.
What do you say to Americans who believe that you got this wrong?
And I do want them to stay calm. And we are doing a great job. If you look at those individual statements, they're all true. Stay calm. It will go away. You know it is going away. And it will go away. And we're going to have a great victory. And it's people like you and CNN that say things like that, it's why people just don't want to listen to CNN anymore. You could ask a normal question. The statements I made are, I want to keep the country calm. I don't want panic in the country. I could cause panic much better than even you. I would make you look like a minor league player. But you know what? I don't want to do that. I want to have our country be calm and strong and fight and win. And it will go away.
Who says that? Who says I can cause panic better than you can, or I can cause chaos better than you can? Like, we made a joke about this earlier, because he'll say that on almost any issue. I could make oranges better than you can, or I could make orange juice better. I could make cars better than you can. I could make it better than anybody can, right? And I was kidding around a couple of months ago saying, like, if a murderer came up to him and said, oh, I'm great at murdering, he'd be like, I can murder better than you. And he did. He just said, I can create chaos better than you, right? Who brags about that? God, you're so stupid. But also, Acosta's asking him about his own quotes. Mm-hmm. So if Trump left it at, hey, listen, I didn't want to cause panic. I knew that wasn't exactly right. I knew that the scientists weren't saying that, but I really, really didn't want people to panic, and I wanted them to remain calm. So I hope people understand. I say, okay, I get it. It wasn't ideal, but I totally get it. But he can't help himself. So he says, I didn't want to cause panic. Then he adds, every one of those statements was true. No, it didn't go away like a miracle. That wasn't remotely true. Another statement that Acosta didn't read was, at one point in that same timeline, he said, there's 15 cases and soon there'll be 0. Now there's 2,800 cases. And he's saying, well, if we get to 100,000 or 200,000, that'll be considered a success. So what happened to 0, you liar, you incompetent buffoon? What happened? Why don't you answer the question? No, it hurt your feelings. Oh, no, you're being snarky. I don't like you. It isn't about you.
Yeah, and he's been vicious to reporters who ask relevant questions, especially if those questions contain things that Trump has said in the past that makes him look bad. And look, I think that there needs to be a broader debate in the journalistic community about the responsible way to cover these pressers. I personally don't think carrying these pressers live makes any sense. Now, he's not a typical president who's interested in sharing or relaying accurate information in the middle of this pandemic. He's using this as a way to rally and to win his reelection. So he's lying to the American public about which drugs are effective in treating coronavirus, how many tests are out there, how many ventilators are out there. He's putting out ridiculous conspiracy theories about hospitals allegedly hoarding their medical supplies while simultaneously pretending like they're experiencing a shortage. He's nuts. He's nuts, and he's a public safety danger, risk. And so instead of covering it live, I think you should cover his presser, no question. But covering it live without real-time fact-checking is insanely dangerous. And I think that they should record it, chop up the relevant stuff that people need to know, and then, and obviously share it and broadcast it with their audiences. And then the second part is you got to do fact-checking when he's misleading the American people.
Yeah. The key here is unapologetic fact-checking.
Yes.
I remember CNN during the debate said, this is so important, we're going to hire a fact check, or we're going to work with a fact-checking organization. You're a news organization. You should be able to do fact-checking. We do fact-checking. You could do it on your own. It's not that complicated. So when the president says things that aren't true and it's about silly politics, I think you should fact-check him anyway. But I guess it's optional if you're a news organization, even though that makes no sense. But in a situation like this, where people's lives are on the line, it's not optional, because you're almost taking on the liability along with Trump in misleading people if you do not correct his misstatements. And at a bare minimum, there's different categories, right? If he says we're handling this great, that's his opinion. It's not remotely true, but it's not a thing you could fact check because it's just his opinion. You could give facts about how he has not handled it great, but that's one category. A second category is his wild, insane conspiracy theories. Anna alluded to one of them. He's like, during one of these press conferences, he said, I think they're taking the masks out the back door of the hospitals. No one's ever reported that. He just made it up. He's a conspiracy theorist, lunatic, etc. But does CNN or any other news organization know at that point there's definitively no one ever taking a mask out the back door of a hospital? No, they don't necessarily know that. But I would come out and say no one has ever reported that. We don't know where the president got it from. And then finally, the third category is things that he is definitively not telling the truth on. We have enough ventilators. That is not true. There are governor after governor showing that asking for more ventilators. They do not have enough. There's doctors and scientists that have estimated the number of ventilators needed and say we don't have enough. Same with masks, same with test kits. These things are provable. We're doing testing as well as any country. That is not true. We're testing among the lowest in the world. South Korea tests nearly 1,000 times more than we do. Things that are provable must be shown on air. If he says, hey, there's this miracle drug, might be the greatest drug ever, which he talked about it in one case, you've got to come on air and say that is not true. The FDA has not approved that. It is experimental. Do not in any way, shape, or form take that drug yet. You have to say that, otherwise people's lives are in danger.
When we come back from the break, we'll discuss some of the consequences that Americans have faced, especially when they've lost their family members as a result of COVID-19, and we'll discuss more. Come right back.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. We're trying to get $250,000 in our fundraising drive to keep Young Turks sustainable and healthy. $250,000 is the goal for today to get to it by the end of the month. Right now, we did go up from $231 to $233,028 right now. Are we going to make it? No, doesn't look like it, but let's keep going. You guys are amazing. You never know. Oftentimes you'll pull it out in near miraculous ways. And for the members today, we have a great post-game show that where they get everything first, and oftentimes only them. I did a very important story and serious story about Chris Cuomo. He's got coronavirus. Make sure you check that out on TYT.com or on YouTube.com/TYT. But in the postgame, we're going to do a very light story about Andrew Cuomo. Does he have a nipple ring? Wants to know. And bosses that are installing creeper cameras into their workers' computers at home so they can check in on them when they are not noticing. So all that in the post game, tyt.com/join to become a member, or you can hit the join button underneath the video if you're watching on YouTube. But speaking of members, Lieutenant Mick G writes in, Cenk and Anna never did get my swag bag from over 6 months ago at $50 a month. So I just upgraded to a new $100 a month membership because I love to double down. Haha, of course I upgraded to support the show. Didn't even know until now there was a higher tier. Love you guys. Lieutenant Back, love you right back, brother. That is incredibly generous of you. We deeply appreciate it. And we will check into that swag bag. We got to deliver on our promises. And thanks for letting us know. And if you notice, I took off my jacket due to popular demand. But then in the Ethernet writes in, I'm going to be a contrarian. Cenk looks great in that blazer. Right after I took it off. Anyway, where were you before? Anyway, thank you for the support. Robin Bitrick says, I have a My Pillow. I'm sitting on it right now. Probably a very appropriate use for it. Peter on Twitter said, My Pillow, more like my shillow.
Oh.
Infecto says, nothing says quality product like Trump's endorsement. I love that.
Seriously.
Last couple of quick YouTube super chats. Kless says, raw, real news right here. Love you guys. Kless, love you back for using YouTube super chat. That also helps the show. And Michael Haight says, just became a member last week, but I've been watching the show for a while. Love your show. Keep the fight up. Will do, brother. Will do. Speaking of which, Anna, take it away.
All right. Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus has been so disastrous, and the number of fatalities continues to rise. And so as a result of that, some who have been his most avid supporters are coming out, speaking out against him and saying that they no longer support him. One of those individuals is a legendary New York sports broadcaster. I only say legendary because when the story came up, Cenk seemed to know who he was and thought this was a big deal. But his name's Mike Francesca, and here's what he had to say about Donald Trump's handling of COVID-19.
We're watching people die, and now we know people who died. And we're not seeing one or two people die now in our neighborhood. We're seeing them die by the 10s and 20s by the day. They're bringing people out of the hospital in Queens in body bags, 5 minutes from where he grew up. Ask the nurses and the doctors in that hospital if it's right now. They know it's not. They don't have the supplies they need. So don't give me the My Pillow guy doing a song and dance up here on a Monday afternoon when people are dying in Queens. And how can you have a scoreboard that says 2,000 people have died and tell us it's okay if another 198,000 die? That's a good job. How is that a good job in our country? It's a good job if nobody else dies. Not if another 198,000 people die. So now 200,000 people are disposable?
So Mike Francesca is part of the team of Mike and the Mad Dog for a long, long time. He's about as well-known a sports radio broadcaster as there is in the country. And he was a Trump supporter. So he backed Trump during the 2016 election saying, the guy's a builder. We need to rebuild the infrastructure. We need someone who knows how to get things done, how to do construction and change things. And he has supported him throughout. He thought the impeachment and the Mueller report were nonsense. But apparently even Trump supporters have a breaking point. And that breaking point is life and death issues. And when they could see with their own eyes people in body bags, that apparently is the point of no return. So Francesca, who of course loves New York, from New York, seeing his fellow New Yorkers being carried out, and there's if you haven't seen it, there are pictures of bodies piled up outside of hospitals, in body bags, waiting for freezer trucks to pick them up. And yeah, people have a breaking point, and some people like Mike Francesca looked like they genuinely, thought that Trump could get something done, and being a businessman maybe gave him a unique advantage in getting things done. And they don't follow politics closely. They don't know that he was a scam artist his whole life. But now when they see the scam with their own eyes and it's causing people to die, they go, no more, man. This is beyond outrageous.
Well, I'm glad that people are waking up, but not to be too harsh on Francesca, I feel that people who have some public notoriety, who have a following, if they choose to weigh in on politics and, let's say, endorse someone like Donald Trump, I just feel that they have an obligation and a responsibility to follow politics enough to have an informed position. And look, average voters, people who don't, do any type of commentary or broadcasting or media for a living, I get it. People need to make ends meet. They got to go to work. They got to feed their kids. And I totally understand if people aren't 100% aware of what's going on. But Francesca is apparently like a very successful sports broadcaster. And if you're going to publicly endorse someone like Donald Trump, it's really your responsibility to understand who Trump is as a person and whether or not he is a scam artist. And I hate that it got to the point where bodies needed to pile up in our own country for people to wake up to how monstrous Donald Trump really is.
And last thing about that is that with conservatives, they really can't understand it until it happens to them. I mean, there's some empathy gene missing there. So when Trump, I don't know, maybe people don't know, but doesn't everybody know that Trump scammed everybody who went to Trump University, that it wasn't a real university? He robbed them, he bilked them, he scammed them, and then he had to pay a $25 million fine and admitted he hates to admit anything. He hates to pay any money, but he had to do that because there was no way around it. His own Trump charity was a scam. He would buy paintings of himself, pay his legal bills. I mean, he's a monstrous guy. But hey, he was scamming other people with the charity and the university and a thousand other things he did. But when I see my neighbors in body bags, now it's important. Now, having said all that, I still think it's monumentally important for guys like Mike Francesca to turn around and tell their viewers and listeners, this isn't right. And you shouldn't accept it, because this is, in a country like America, to say that 200,000 people dead in the streets is a success is beyond outrageous.
Yeah. Well, I want to reset for this next video because I think it's important for people to know the reality of what it's like to lose a family member to COVID-19. So recently on Brooke Baldwin's CNN show, she had a guest on who lost a family member to this pandemic. And Baldwin couldn't keep it together, and for understandable reasons. What's being communicated here is important for you guys to understand, because if someone gets sick in your family, there are certain things that you literally cannot do as a loved one. So this is a difficult video to watch. I want to warn everyone. It's very emotional, but with that said, let's take a look.
Michelle Bennett lost her 75-year-old mother, Carol Ann, last week to coronavirus, and while she was unable to be in the room with her when her mother passed away, nurses at the hospital made sure Michelle and her siblings were able to say a proper goodbye on FaceTime. She ends up in the hospital, and then as the end is near for her, you realize you cannot physically be by her bedside. That must have been incredibly difficult for you.
It was hard for me and for my siblings as well. I don't think that's something we saw coming with this COVID. To be told, I'm sorry, it's against protocol. We're not allowed to let anyone in, and it's for our own safety and for our own well-being. And we understood that, but just not being able to be there and hold my mom's hand, rub her head, tell her the things that I wanted to say to her, it was just such a difficult time.
No, to not be able to sit with your mother, as you said, to hold her hand, to brush her hair. I know my own mother's watching, and forgive me, but I feel for you.
Thank you.
Man, that's a hard video to watch, because there's a lot of people dealing with that right now, and I don't know if everyone's really pictured themselves in that situation where you have a loved one. You know, I think about my own mom. How could you not? And not being able to say goodbye to them or touch is so important, guys. It's so important. It's a way of showing comfort and affection, and not being able to do that to a family member when they're, passing is terrifying.
So Anna and I were talking about this off air a day or two ago, and I made this same exact point. It's just logical. I actually got it from my wife who was talking about it. If a loved one goes in the hospital, they're gone. You cannot see them. You cannot go in there because that wing has coronavirus all over it. And some of them come back out, some of them don't. And my wife was saying, at Jacob Javits Center, where they've done the makeshift hospital, they might not have your somewhere to plug in your phone. In the middle of getting carried out, you might not bring your phone. I mean, imagine a situation where you don't even have a phone. As they're being carted away, that's the last time you ever see them. Or now we're all separated from our parents because we're trying to protect them. So the last time you see them might have been 2 weeks ago. Oh, God, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And look, I sent that video to my mom because, she's taking it seriously, but everyone's experiencing cabin fever. So I always worry about her going to a grocery store or something. And I'm like, I don't know how I would handle being in a situation like this. Please, everyone needs to take this seriously. Please stay home. Please, obviously wash your hands, use as much disinfectant, just be aware of your surroundings. It breaks my heart to see people having to go through this, and it could have been prevented. I mean, the sheer numbers of people who have already died and are expected to die in the United States as a result of, the incompetence in the federal government is just devastating.
Yeah. And so, look, and then you add the politics on top, and you got Donald Trump, as we talked about in the beginning of the show, worried about his ego, and he won't send medical supplies to governors who don't thank him enough. And then you think about your own parents and never being able to see them again. This guy does not understand the enormity or the personal toll of this disaster at all. We need someone responsible in charge.
All right. In the post-game show today, we're going to discuss how some white supremacists are encouraging people with COVID-19 to spread the virus to certain groups of people, including cops. And we have some other stories as well. So you can become a member by going to tyt.com/join. Everyone else, have a wonderful night. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.